Welcome to r/JustNoHOA, where people share stories about their crazy homeowner associations that make us feel better about not living in an HOA. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our awesome community. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. You, sir, are lacking the vinegar to win. Well folks, it has happened. I've been challenged by the HOA. I've lived here since late October, so the adventure begins in the greatest location ever imagined. The cab of my $300 junkyard pickup truck. Alright, I'm done with theatrics, so my old S10 pickup was having some problems. It is 26 years old and I really bought it out of a junkyard, so yeah, it's got issues. Well, I looked it over and it needs a fuel filter and oil. And more duct tape. But the main issue was the fuel filter, so I got the part at a huge cost, $6.99, and decided since it is 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit that day, I would use the garage and knock it out. So I pull out the tools I think I will need and quickly notice I'm not fitting on my side under the 2WD S10. So I grab the floor jack and lift the frame to accommodate. So I get to disconnecting the fuel lines and notice the amazing amount of fumes that just stayed right there. Like, wow, I apparently have not worked with gas in a garage in years because I forgot the airflow rule. So I got up and opened the large door. All good. Get the filter out and test the airflow to see that it is indeed clogged. I decided to kill a few minutes and get some fresh air and have a cigar. As I am taking a bit, a car pulls up in my driveway. Since I am outside anyway, I started down the driveway. Two people get out. The guy has a bad shirt embroidered on the shirt and the other I would describe as a well-to-do soccer mom. We will call blue for guy and green for girl, so I asked if I can help them. Blue:
Hey, how are you? I'm Blue. This is my partner Green. We are with the HOA security.
Me: Nice to meet you. I would shake your hand, but I'm covered in gasoline. Something I can help you with? Green:
Yeah, we're patrolling around and noticed your garage door open.
Me: Yeah, damn truck got a clogged filter. Green:
I'm sorry to hear that. You mind me asking, what filter?
Me: Fuel filter. Blue:
So you're changing it? What are you collecting the leaked fuel in?
Me: A catch pan. My clothes and skin. You know, the normal.
Bad joke.
Blue:
You mind?
Motioning to the garage. Me: Guess not. Leading the way. Green:
So you know you cannot dump the fuel on the ground, right?
Me: That is why there is a catch pan. Green:
What about when you're done? What will you do with the fuel?
Me: Probably use it for part cleaner or lawnmower or something. Why?
Blue: We just want to make sure you're aware of the possible dangers of gas getting into the groundwater.
Me: First off, at most it is a gallon of gas. EPA does not consider it a spill until 5 gallons are on the ground. Second, I am 400 yards from the lake. And Green tried to interrupt me. And third, I have oil dry. I'm using a catch pan and I've taken the precaution of a spill. Green:
That is all well and good, but most people don't. Blah blah blah.
Honestly was pissed at this point. Me: Most. Keyword: I've only lived here a few months. Are we going to have issues?
Blue: Not if you follow the rules.
Me? Follow the rules? For shits and giggles, where did you obtain your security licenses?
Blue: Excuse me?
Me: You know, the license that allows you to work security in Illinois. That stupid little questionnaire. Green:
You're missing the point.
That tone of a mother scolding her child. Me: Wrong. You missed the point. Please leave my property. You are not welcome here anymore. And you better believe I will be calling the HOA office to discuss the issues.
Blue: No need for that. You appear to be within the rules.
Me: Let me sum this up simply for you. Get off my property. You step foot on it again without my permission and you will be trespassing, per the HOA rules. And another thing, y'all would have been better off with honey on this because I have more vinegar than you both. They left. I got the job done and put the majority of the tools away to see them pull up with the county sheriff's department behind them. They waited as the officer talked with me. The cop was annoyed he was called out for this, but did his job. They all cleared out with no issues, and I called the HOA office informing of the issue, of my concerns of blue and green, and the fact that aside from the ridiculous questions and the tone from green, that I do appreciate the job they do, and apologized for any poor taste I left with them. That honey I mentioned earlier, yeah, I know how to drizzle. The office apologized to me for the issue, told me no issues would come of this, and thanked me for being the bigger man and apologetic. Because I am a nice guy and the HOA board meeting was tonight, I actually have the official conclusion. So I went to the meeting, my first one. Apparently I'm somewhat known by the board. The HOA office manager informed them of our conversation and assumed I would be there to discuss it. Turns out green, she is fired. Blue, he's on probation. They not only bugged me today, but a few others, including a board member's family member. Otherwise, that meeting sucked. It was drawn out and seemed like a classroom-style political education system. And sorry, I forgot to mention, this story was posted by user glowstick006 on our own subreddit. Thank you very much for posting. And if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. All help is very much appreciated, thank you so much. And the next one is part 2 of the story that we have started in yesterday's video. It is titled FHOA, Recalled and Removed Our Tyrannical HOA Board Part 2, the supposedly good HOA. We started looking and we came across a house that we really liked. The issue was of course that it was in an HOA, but the agent assured us that this was a good one, not at all like the last one that we lived in, and he had a point. This development was built in the early 80s, so the CC&Rs were rather condensed. The use restrictions were all of 2 pages and were essentially the same as the city municipal blight codes. Of course, there was the usual
garbage cans must be stored out of sight, no livestock, etc.
But nothing really objectionable. Little did we know that in previous years the entire board had to be removed and that there had been 2 earlier lawsuits as well, all of which we were unaware of. So we bought it, and honestly for the better part of 8 years it looked like the agent was right after all. This was the rare benign HOA. There were no amenities, very little common area, just a few end caps, and association fees were low, $38 a month. It made it easy to forget that you were actually living in an HOA. Subsequently, homeowner apathy was rampant. There were a fair number of rental units and snowbirds, both of which were totally checked out and uninvolved. Nobody ever went to any of the HOA meetings or paid any attention to what was going on, myself included, which opened the door to the issues that would later come. Unbeknownst to us, all the board was slowly being taken over by a guy who was the living embodiment of Barney Fife from the old Andy Griffith show. It's the classic story, older guy, nothing better to do, busybody control freak, gets on the board and everybody watch out now.
There's a new sheriff in town, who's going to clean this place up?
Hilarity, or is it headaches, follow. He initially got on the board because he ran uncontested and seemed to think that he was appointed dictator of the community. So Mac5, as I will refer to him from here on out, is such an unpleasant, disagreeable a-hole to deal with that one by one as board members' terms came up, they simply did not run again because they had enough dealing with him. This allowed him to replace them with his hand-picked puppets who just did whatever he told them to. Once he had full control of the board, Mac5 went wild. They started fining people for things that were not actually prohibited, refused to grant anyone a hearing with the board, and simply ignored the bylaws and state law regarding the fine process. The typical scenario went like this. They would send out a violation letter. If you did not do what they wanted within a week, the fines would start rolling in on a weekly basis, increasing in dollar amount each time with veiled threats of foreclosure soon to follow, even though you cannot foreclose for unpaid fines in Arizona. Most people were just getting intimidated and folded. When they tried fining us for things that are not in the CC&Rs, I finally had enough and called them out on it and let everyone else know what was going on. Their response was to carpet bomb the community with fines, especially the people that they did not like, while their friends were exempt. The more fines that they sent out, the more people complained. The more people complained, the more fines they sent out. In 8 months, they issued 5 times the number of fines that had been issued for the previous 3 years combined. The infamous Labor Day lambasting. As was par for the course, they scheduled the next meeting with minimal notice, 16 hours, and on a holiday in the hopes that no one would show up. To their surprise, a good 40 homeowners appeared, intent on letting the board know just what they thought of their latest antics. At the end of the meeting, each homeowner had 2 minutes to address the board. It quickly degenerated into 40 minutes of one homeowner after the other excoriating the board relentlessly. They really had no defense, and the meeting wrapped up with a former board member advising them that if they were unclear as to their duties, that perhaps they should schedule a consultation with the HOA attorney, which they did. The attorney had to spend 4 hours explaining the CC&Rs, bylaws and state law to them because they were incapable of figuring them out for themselves, and ultimately they had to reverse all of the outstanding fines that they had sent out since they were not valid. This was all a bit of a setback for Mac 5, and for a few months things were pretty quiet. No new fines were coming out, and we all figured that we had reined them in. Little did we know that Mac 5 had other plans. So I suppose another part is coming soon. Of course, I will keep you guys updated. And by the way, please let me know in the comments if you still enjoy r/JustNoHOA, because we have not done the subreddit in a while, and I know that not everybody is a fan of it, but I think every once in a while it is fine. The next one is titled Fairfax Homeowners Group Humbled by Court Battle with Residents. The feud that consumed Fairfax County's Old Belhaven would span 4 years and cost the community as much as $400,000, and it was ignited by one of the smallest of sparks, an Obama for President sign. The modest placard Sam and Maria Ferran planted in their yard during the 2008 election put them on a collision course with the Neighborhood Homeowners Association. It was 4 inches taller than the association's covenants allowed.
Need I say more? This would lead to chaos.
A neighbor fretted in an email about the precedent that would be set if the sign was not removed.
Our property values would be put at risk.
Such HOA disputes are as suburban as cul-de-sacs and 2-car garages, but few metastasize into legal battles that spend years in the courts, break legal ground, and bankrupt the HOA. Most damaging of all, though, was a move probably unprecedented in area neighborhood feuds. The common area that is the literal and metaphoric heart of Old Belhaven was put up for sale last year to settle its debts. It appeared that the square, as some called the neighborhood, would no longer have a square. It destroyed our community, Maria Ferran said. The battle lines in Old Belhaven were starkly drawn. On one side, the Ferrans said that they were standing up to an HOA run amok. On the other, HOA supporters saw a couple that inflicted financial ruin on the association and their neighbors to make a point. Experts say such feuds are becoming more common with the tremendous growth of HOAs, which typically require residents to sign covenants governing architecture, landscaping, and other matters when they move into an association neighborhood. The HOAs collect dues and often have the power to fine residents who don't comply with the covenants. There were 10,000 association-governed communities in the United States in 1970, and by 2012 the number had reached 324,000, according to the Community Association Institute. 1 in 5 Americans lives in a neighborhood governed by an association. Their growth means that there are a lot of people in HOAs who have not necessarily bought into the lifestyle, said Evan McKenzie, a University of Illinois professor who has written 2 books on HOAs. Some like the higher level of rulemaking, but others don't like the fines and control. You have conflict when these groups come together. One community, 2 camps. Sam and Maria Ferran, a wine broker and a government lawyer, moved to the 44-unit townhouse community in the Alexandria section of Fairfax in 1999. In many ways, it is a typical Northern Virginia neighborhood with tidy houses and a mix of government employees, service members, and professionals. The townhouses line the 3/4-acre square, which is the neighborhood's central feature and the site of most community-wide events. Without the green plot, it might be difficult to call Belhaven a community. The Ferrans said the HOA had a reputation for hardline stances. In one case, board member Don Hughes compared some residents' refusal to install window pane dividers to the
cat and mouse game Saddam Hussein played with the USA.
emails show. Ultimately, Hussein paid the price, he said, concluding that the residents should comply. Nevertheless, the Ferrans were surprised when letters arrived in October 2008 telling them and others that their political placards were too large.
This is our final request,
Hughes wrote on behalf of the board. Emails showed that Hughes pushed the board to act. He wrote that he was prepared to make a motion to put a lien on the Ferrans' house if they did not comply. He called sending a letter a
teaching moment.
Hughes declined to comment. The Ferrans, or Ferrans, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, were angry. They acknowledged that the sign broke the rules, but said it seemed like an assault on free speech to go after a minor violation during the height of an election. Their response: cutting the placard in half, they planted OBA and MA signs in their front yard. The prank did not amuse board members and they decided to act. They passed a resolution allowing the board to fine residents up to $900 per infraction for violating HOA guidelines. Across the country, fining authority has been controversial, with HOAs hitting residents with levies for such transgression as displays of colored Christmas lights and patches of dead grass. Board members believed that they had the right under Virginia law, but the Ferrans saw an illegal power grab that had no basis in the HOA's covenants. When the board, acting at a meeting that was not publicly announced, rejected the Ferrans' roof and deck projects for aesthetic and architectural reasons, the Ferrans said it was retribution. "It's like we were not living in America," Maria Ferran said. "You are always one board election away from a tyranny." They wield enormous power. The Ferrans filed a lawsuit against the HOA, saying it did not have the authority to impose fines and had vindictively rejected their home improvements. Board members were taken aback. They saw residents who would not abide by the rules that had made Old Belhaven a great neighborhood and who were willing to resort to drastic action to get what they wanted. Archie Umflett, one of the neighborhood's oldest residents, put it this way:
"When it comes to the Ferrans, it's their way or the highway."
A costly conflict. The legal fight consumed Old Belhaven. The Ferrans said HOA backers told them to move. They found bullets in their yard. Someone implored a priest at their church to prevail on the Ferrans to stop the lawsuit. A local real estate agent said the infighting was scaring off some home buyers. "It was a crusade," a supporter of the Ferrans said. On the other side, board members said that the Ferrans were unreasonable and that they declined numerous offers to begin settlement discussions. And as the case ground on, the HOA increased dues from $650 a year to about $3,500, mostly to cover legal fees. The board's former president, Jim LeBlanc, said the situation put a strain on some elderly residents living on fixed incomes. Some had their health impacted, LeBlanc said. "There is a sense of, what is it going to take to resolve this? This was a tragic nightmare." The Ferrans said that they, too, had made attempts to settle matters, but that those overtures were rejected by the HOA. In 2010, a county judge sided with the Ferrans on the fining issue. The case set a Virginia precedent that HOAs cannot claim powers such as fining that are not specifically laid out in their covenants. The roof and deck issues, which had been spun off into a separate lawsuit, were decided in 2011. Another county judge ruled that the board's votes to reject the home improvements were improper because they came at a secret meeting and followed arbitrary standards. The HOA was on the hook for about $100,000 to cover the Ferrand's legal fees, and it owed hundreds of thousands more for its own legal expenses. The HOA was financially ruined. LeBlanc said the association did not have the money to cover the bills, so residents voted for bankruptcy. Late last year, a court-appointed bankruptcy trustee put the community square up for sale to cover the HOA's debts. The pleasant square, with its trees and benches, had in better times been the site of community picnics and Christmas festivities. Now it was a reminder of the community's plight. A red and white "For Sale" sign drove home the point. A developer began negotiations to buy the plot, but pulled out. The developer had received anonymous threats. Then a former board president stepped in and put up a gift of $60,000 to facilitate a settlement. A judge approved the plan, but the Ferrands filed a motion Friday opposing the settlement because it relied, in part, on the use of capital funds. What will become of the square remains an open question. But the damage was done. Large gatherings on the square have all but ceased. LeBlanc said, for now, individual residents are paying out of pocket for the plot's water, electricity and maintenance. The Ferrands have built their deck and their new roof. And Old Belhaven is set to begin discussing what form the HOA will take as it emerges from bankruptcy. LeBlanc hopes the wounds will heal in time. There really, truly was a sense of community here, LeBlanc said, that was truly lost in this process. And with that, we have unfortunately reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's content. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to join our awesome community. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I see you again tomorrow.